Cop's target. A black man, homeless at a diner until he makes one phone call and ends their career. He just wanted to sit quietly and eat his breakfast, but two police officers walked in, looking at him like a stranger who needed to be run out of town. What they didn't know was that a single phone call from that black man would bring their entire careers crashing down. Now let's dive into this gripping story. Don't forget to like and subscribe for more powerful stories. Southfield, Michigan. A gloomy Tuesday morning, the sky as gray as if it hadn't yet awakened. A light breeze swept through narrow streets, and the sun couldn't be bothered to rise. In a modest corner of town, nestled between an old laundromat and a second-hand store, stood a diner named Ella's Kitchen, a place where locals came not just to eat, but to feel at home. At the window-side table, a worn wooden table with a slight crack near the edge, Raymond Ellis, 60, sat in quiet solitude like he did every Tuesday. Draped across his shoulders was a faded khaki field jacket, a uniform piece that anyone in the intelligence community would recognize. His hair was salt and pepper, his eyes deep but far from dim. There was something about him that commanded both respect and distance. Though it was never openly discussed, everyone in the diner, from staff to regulars, knew. Raymond was once a regional director of the Federal Bureau of Investigation. No car, no lunchbox, no nameplate, just a cup of black coffee and a silence full of presence. "Good morning, Uncle Ellis," said Monica, the young waitress whose smile never faded, resting a familiar hand on his shoulder. "Got any peach cobbler left for an old friend?" he replied, his voice low, gravelly, yet warm. "Not till noon, you know that." "Same as always?" Raymond gave a slight nod. No need for words. The corner of the diner sank back into the rhythm of clinking silverware, AM sports radio, and the rich scent of coffee rising from an old machine. But to the people here, Raymond's presence wasn't just routine. He was part of the place, like the weathered sign above the door, or the framed photo of Mrs. Ella's late husband behind the counter. To an outsider, Raymond might look like a failure. No fixed address, alone, worn shoes, a coat faded with time. But inside Ella's Kitchen, he was a symbol, a man who didn't need to raise his voice to be heard. And then, the door swung open. Two men walked in, police uniforms, heavy steps, eyes not searching for an empty table. They were looking for him. The bell above the door of Ella's Kitchen rang. No one looked up. It's a sound that appeared every morning. But this time, it wasn't a regular customer. Two men in police uniforms stepped inside, their polished black shoes landing with steady rhythm on the old tiled floor. Officer Brandt, tall and built like a former football player, led the way. Behind him was Officer Mercer, shorter, with a square face, and a clipboard tucked tightly under one arm, like he was ready to write a ticket at any moment. No smiles, no greetings, no searching for a table. They walked straight toward Raymond Ellis. "Are you a customer here?" Brandt asked, his voice cold, like he was checking if a stranger had taken the wrong seat on a bus. Raymond looked up, slowly, like a man who had heard that question 100 times from people who thought they knew who he was. "I'm a customer," he said simply. "Did you order anything?" Mercer cut in. "Waiting on it." Brandt glanced toward the counter, where Monica was holding a tray of drinks. "Got a receipt?" Monica set the tray down and stepped forward. "He placed an order. I'm serving him directly. He's a regular. Comes in every week." Brandt turned sharply, his tone harsh. "Did I ask you?" Monica froze. She looked at Raymond, eyes filled with concern, but he just gave a small shake of his head. Behind the counter, Mrs. Ella Jennings, the owner, lifted her gaze, her hand still holding a glass mid-wash. She hadn't stepped in yet, but her eyes, sharp as knives, were tracking every movement from the two officers. Raymond remained calm. He reached into the inner pocket of his coat and pulled out an old leather wallet. Not the usual kind. This one had a tiny silver-embossed logo, worn with time, but still recognizable if you'd ever worked in the field. He took out a retired FBI ID card and placed it on the table. Raymond Ellis, Federal Bureau of Investigation. Retired 2017. Last position, Regional Director. "So, you used to be a cop?" Mercer asked with a smirk, eyeing the card like it was a novelty item. Brandt crossed his arms and sniffed. "No fixed address, no photo ID, just an old retirement card. We can't verify any of that." Monica looked like she was about to speak again, but Raymond simply raised his hand slightly, signaling, "Let me handle this." He didn't raise his voice, didn't react. But in his eyes, there was something Brandt and Mercer didn't notice. They were digging their own grave. Mercer scribbled in his notes. Brandt looked around the diner, raising his voice. "We're just doing our job. Can't have someone sitting for hours in a diner with just one cup of coffee, taking up space from paying customers." A couple seated nearby lowered their heads. A delivery driver near the door stepped back, clearly waiting to see what would happen. No one dared speak, but the whole diner had gone still with tension. Raymond gently lifted his coffee cup. "I trained the FBI's rapid response team for 8 years, handled over 120 critical cases across the Midwest. I don't need to prove I'm just here for breakfast." "Then prove it." Brandt narrowed his eyes, mocking. "Call someone you know from that world you say you used to belong to." Raymond set the cup down, his voice low and firm. "I will." And he reached into his coat pocket. Not for a weapon. Not for another badge. Just an old, scratched flip phone, the kind no one under 40 used anymore. But it was with that very phone that he was about to call someone, whom these two officers absolutely did not want to meet. The air inside Ella's kitchen felt like it had been vacuumed out. Officer Brandt crept forward step by step, his hand resting on his belt, not drawing his weapon, but he didn't need to. The way he stood, the rise and fall of his breath, the arrogance in his gaze, it all sent one unmistakable message. I am the law here. Officer Mercer stood slightly behind him, pen already in hand, its tip pressed to the notepad like he was just waiting for Raymond to move so he could write him up, label him, and slap on the charge of public disturbance, a label all too familiar to people with skin like his. You can leave quietly, Brandt growled, or I can help you. Leave? Raymond raised an eyebrow. I paid. I ordered food. I'm sitting in the right place. What exactly are you kicking me out for? For loitering, Mercer interjected. No fixed address. We're authorized to act on individuals who show signs of vagrancy or freeloading. Monica stepped forward, her voice trembling but firm. He's not freeloading. I've served him for nearly 2 years. Every Tuesday morning. Same order. Always pays in full. Brandt didn't turn his head. He said coldly, You should stay out of things that don't concern you. This is official business. At that moment, Mrs. Ella Jennings, who had run this diner for over 30 years, stopped making the coffee she was brewing and walked over. You two are harassing my customer. You'd better get back behind the counter before you're charged with obstruction, Mercer snapped. The entire diner fell silent. No one spoke, but everyone knew. These two officers had just crossed the line. Raymond remained seated. No resistance, no surrender. He reached into the inner pocket of his coat and pulled out an old flip phone. Dust clung to its edges, the casing worn down. But when he flipped it open, his fingers moved quickly, not searching for a number, but pressing speed dial. Number 1. Just one ring. The line picked up. Raymond didn't introduce himself, didn't say much. He simply said 4 words, in a voice low and sharp as a blade. It's happening again. He shut the phone. No one knew who he had called, but that absolute calmness shifted the tension in the diner into something else. Worry. Not for Raymond, but for the two men applying pressure in the wrong place. Brandt stared at the phone on the table like it had just gone off like a grenade. "Who did you just call?" "Someone who might ask you that same question," Raymond replied. Mercer snorted. "This little stunt won't work, Mr. Ellis." "It's not a stunt," Raymond answered, eyes locked, unblinking. "It's protocol." A minute passed. Outside, the hum of traffic rolled on. Inside, every eye was watching, waiting for something they couldn't name. But it was coming, and it was close. Less than 10 minutes after what seemed like a simple phone call, Ella's kitchen fell into a breathless silence. No more clinking of cutlery, no conversations. Even the most familiar regulars sat upright, eyes darting toward the door, as if the entire diner shared one collective instinct. Something big was coming. And then, the door opened. No sirens, no rushing footsteps. Just a man in a dark blue suit, walking in with a stride both calm and resolute. A long coat, polished black leather shoes, and a crisp white shirt collar sharp as a blade. No badge, no official vehicle. But his presence alone made the entire room seem to pause its breath. Thomas Reed, Deputy Director of the U.S. Department of Justice, a longtime friend of Raymond Ellis from their early days as interns in the federal system. He didn't look around, didn't greet anyone. His eyes went straight to Brandt and Mercer, now standing like schoolboys unprepared for a pop quiz. "I need your badge numbers." "Now," Thomas Reed said. His voice wasn't loud, but it was clear, firm, and carried more weight than any police command. Brandt opened his mouth, not quick enough to respond, while Mercer stammered. Who are you?" "This is a scene we have the authority to manage." Thomas calmly pulled a thin leather wallet from his inner jacket pocket. Not hurried, not showing off. Just opened it for 1 second. Just long enough for the Department of Justice logo to catch the ceiling light. "Thomas Reed, Deputy Director, DOJ. I'm not your superior," he said, eyes locked on Brandt. "I'm the one investigating you." The room dropped a level in silence. Monica froze mid-pour with the coffee pot in hand. Mrs. Ella gripped the edge of the counter, disbelief in her eyes. "You've just violated at least 3 federal investigative protocols," Thomas said, his tone sharp as honed steel. 1, engaging a citizen without just cause. 2, refusing to verify witness testimony from an on-site employee. 3, acting on racial bias, unsupported by concrete evidence. Brandt clenched his fists, his face flushing red. "We were just following procedure," he protested. Thomas gave a slight nod, pulled out his phone, and tapped a command. A short beep followed. "Then you won't mind if that procedure is reviewed by the DOJ's Internal Investigations Unit, will you?" "What?" Mercer blurted out. "From the moment you stepped into this diner," Thomas continued, "your actions have been logged via DOJ's open language monitoring system. And that call, from a former FBI director like Mr. Ellis, was more than enough to trigger a federal-level review. You need to understand, this is no longer about whether he paid for breakfast." Brandt swallowed hard. Mercer gripped his notepad, his hand starting to tremble. "My advice to you is to leave," Thomas concluded, his gaze cutting through them like it could pierce every layer of ego. No handcuffs, no yelling. But the shift in power had unfolded as quietly as a stream, and as forcefully as an underground flood. Raymond still sat there, his eyes fixed on the white ceramic coffee cup. His hand gently stirred the spoon, not fast, not slow. But this time, the entire diner looked at him differently, because they had just witnessed a man who didn't need to shout, didn't need to resist, yet could shake an entire system with just one call. When the door of Ella's kitchen closed behind Officer Brandt and Officer Mercer, a light chill drifted in from outside, as if it carried away the arrogance that had just been shattered. Thomas Reed didn't sit down. He simply tilted his head toward Raymond, a small nod, like that of an old comrade who needed no words. Raymond nodded back, saying nothing, his eyes calm, as if what had just happened was simply part of a regular day. Thomas pulled out a gray business card and placed it on the table. "Someone will contact you within 24 hours. If you need anything, just call." Raymond nodded. "I know." Thomas turned and walked away, without saying goodbye, but every pair of eyes followed him, because this wasn't just a visit, it was a quiet declaration that Raymond Ellis was not the man they thought he was. Silence engulfed the diner. No one said a word. Only the lonely hiss of the coffee machine broke the stillness behind the counter. The regulars couldn't meet his eyes, yet couldn't look away from the 60-year-old black man who had just sat back down in his usual spot, as if he hadn't just been unjustly confronted in the very place he came to every week. Monica was the first to break the silence. She stepped forward, poured more coffee, though her hand trembled slightly. "Mr. Raymond, can you tell me what just happened?" Raymond didn't look up. He simply lifted the cup, gently blew on it. "An old friend stopped by," he replied, voice soft as a breeze, "right when I needed to be heard." Monica stood there, unsure whether to ask more or stay quiet. But her eyes had changed. No longer the cautious sympathy of someone serving a familiar homeless guest, but a respect that couldn't be hidden. Mrs. Ella Jennings, the owner, stepped out from the kitchen, wiping her hands on her apron, and came over to stand beside Monica. "What I warmed up for you is the ham plate," she said, like it was nothing special. But her hand resting on Raymond's shoulder gave a gentle squeeze. "And I hope you know, that seat will always be yours." Raymond just smiled, as the others slowly tried to return to their routines, placing orders, chewing slowly, sipping coffee. No one realized that the body cam on Officer Mercer's chest was still recording everything. And back at the Southfield Police Department's data center, one signal had already been flagged by the federal monitoring system, under direct order from Deputy Director Reed. Within hours, that footage would no longer belong to the city police. It would become evidence, a neutral testimony, and the spark that would ignite a storm the whole town never saw coming. The very next morning, as Monica wiped down tables, her phone buzzed violently in her pocket. A message from her niece, a journalism student in Detroit. "Hey, Auntie, that black man who always sits at your diner is online. Someone leaked the body cam footage. It's going viral." Attached was a video link with over 200,000 views just 6 hours after being posted. Monica turned to look at Raymond, who was holding an old copy of the Detroit Free Press, reading through the news line by line. He was still him, but the world had begun to see him differently. In just one night, Ella's kitchen was no longer the quiet little diner tucked between buildings in Southfield, as it had always been. On Twitter, the hashtags Raymond Ellis was shooting straight to the top 3 national trending topics. On TikTok, the body cam footage was clipped, edited with music, overlaid with text. They tried to humiliate a homeless black man, but they didn't know he was the man who used to hunt monsters. The whole country began asking, "Who is Raymond Ellis?" The answer came faster than expected. CNN aired a special report at 8 a.m. The man profiled by police at a small diner in Michigan has been confirmed as Raymond Ellis, 60, former regional director of the FBI, who directly oversaw counterterrorism operations post 9/11 and was part of the team that hunted the prime suspect in the 2007 National Defense data leak. The Washington Post quickly followed. He wasn't just a public servant, he was a legend. On Reddit, users reposted an old black and white photo from a press conference. Raymond stood behind the FBI director, black suit, navy blue tie, eyes cold as steel. The caption had only 3 words. He was always there. Monica stood frozen behind the bar, staring at her phone, unblinking. The TikTok video had hit 2.1 million views. Another clip, from the diner's security camera, captured the moment Thomas Reed walked in, flashed his DOJ badge, and calmly declared, "I'm not your superior. I'm the one investigating you." Beneath the clip, tens of thousands of comments flooded in. And who did they think they were dealing with? A homeless guy. That man protected the entire nation. I want those 2 officers suspended, immediately. The hashtag's Justice for Raymond. It's time America looked at itself. Outside, a local news station had sent a reporter to stand in front of Ella's kitchen, where a small crowd had gathered in quiet solidarity, holding signs. "I am Raymond Ellis." No one deserves to be treated this way. No shouting. No violence. Just presence. Strong and unmistakable. Inside the diner, Raymond was still seated at his usual table. The newspaper he had read that morning now carried an updated headline. FBI confirms Raymond Ellis once held top-secret role in counterintelligence operations. For the first time, Monica didn't call him Raymond. She placed the coffee down and bowed her head slightly. "Mr. Ellis." "I didn't know." Raymond looked up at her, his gaze free of anger, filled only with calm. "That's what everyone says after it all comes out. But it's also what I'm most used to." Online, an anonymous user reposted a 2009 commendation letter from the Department of Justice, addressed to Ellis for preventing a large-scale attack at an international airport. Beneath it, a comment shared thousands of times read, "A man who once protected this country can't even eat breakfast in peace. This country owes him more than an apology." And what Raymond didn't yet know was that an internal investigation had already been launched, not just into Brandt and Mercer, but into the entire Southfield Police Department. A full audit of misconduct reports from the past 5 years had been ordered. Because when a man who stayed silent for 30 years finally speaks, with just 1 phone call, the whole system starts to shake. Monday morning. The skies over Southfield were gray, as if the whole city was holding its breath. In front of the Southfield Police Department headquarters, there wasn't a sea of people, just a few dozen. But each one carried a sign. No shouting, no violence, only unflinching eyes, and one phrase repeated again and again. "I am Raymond Ellis." Breakfast should never become a battleground. On social media, a screenshot began spreading like wildfire. Officer Brandt's personal Facebook post from 2016, containing a veiled, hateful message. Some people, if they don't have a home, should be locked up like animals. Free meals? Number go, live in the woods. Below it, a laughing reaction. The name on the account, Officer Mercer. Within 24 hours, more than 90,000 signatures were collected on change.org, demanding suspend Brandt, launch a full investigation into racial profiling within Southfield Police. That afternoon, under intense public pressure, an official statement was posted on the police department's website. Officer Brandt has been temporarily suspended, pending internal investigation. Officer Mercer has submitted his resignation. We are currently reviewing all misconduct complaints from the past 5 years. At the same time, Raymond Ellis, the 60-year-old man once pushed out of a peaceful breakfast, received a letter from the Department of Veterans Affairs. Red seal. Hand-signed. The first page read, "Mr. Raymond A. Ellis, ID 490732. We apologize for allowing someone like you to remain in the shadows for so long." Inside was a list of emergency benefits, an expedited housing voucher in Highland Park, Detroit, ready for immediate move-in, a designated personal assistant from the department to help him access health care and psychological support. Full care coverage for 5 years, with no requalification required. When Monica heard the news, she cried right there behind the bar. Not out of pity for Raymond, but because, finally, society had begun to look back at the people it once treated as invisible. That evening, a special report aired on local television. Raymond Ellis, the man who once cracked national-level cases, lived in silence for years, now becomes a symbol for a rising movement to reclaim dignity for the unseen. On TikTok, people don't just use hashtags anymore. New tags had emerged. Justice, by breakfast, we see you now, not invisible anymore. A trending video showed Raymond sitting in Ella's kitchen, still in his old coat, with his usual cup of coffee. The background music was a soft blues track with a deep voice. He never needed to be loud, because his silence changed everything. And right now, Raymond was looking out the diner's window, his gaze no longer detached like before. Because now he knew. That phone call didn't just end a humiliation, it sparked an investigation, ignited a movement, and delivered a reminder to all of America. Never judge a man by the dust on his coat. On Sunday morning, soft sunlight filtered through the frosted glass of Ella's kitchen, casting a glow on table number 3, the familiar spot where Mr. Raymond Ellis sat every week. Today, he didn't sit. He stood up. No microphone, no television cameras, just the people who had once witnessed his humiliation, now listening in silence out of respect. Mrs. Ella Jennings stopped wiping her glass. Monica leaned against the counter, gently gripping her order pad. A few regular patrons had paused their breakfast. Raymond smoothed the edge of his worn coat, raised his head, and spoke in a voice deep and clear, as if each word had been forged from steel and experience. I'm not standing here asking for pity. I'm just asking for a seat. A quiet breath passed. The room froze. He continued, his eyes sweeping across the diner. I've sat face to face with terrorists in Cairo, dismantled money laundering rings in Atlanta. But last week, I had to prove to 2 police officers that I was worthy of eating breakfast. I don't have a fixed address, but I've never been lost. Being poor is not a crime. Losing everything doesn't mean losing your dignity. Monica's voice caught in her throat. A man in the corner set down his fork and knife, eyes misty. The young busboy standing by the kitchen doorway nodded slowly. I've lived 60 years to learn one thing. Respect is not charity. It's something I, and people like me, deserve. No one applauded. They didn't need to. Because words that truly sink into the heart don't need cheering. They just need to be heard. Raymond sat down, slowly took a sip of his coffee. Mrs. Ella Susurro, we've seen you. Now the whole world will too. That evening, a video Monica had quietly recorded on her phone, no edits, no effects, was uploaded to TikTok with the caption, "When a man stands without a stage, the whole society must sit down to listen." In less than 8 hours, the video reached 3.1 million views. And that same evening, an email was sent to the official inbox of Ella's Kitchen from the office of the mayor of Southfield. We would like to invite Mr. Raymond Ellis to be the keynote speaker at next week's Federal Public Service honoree ceremony. 3 weeks after the video from Ella's Kitchen went viral across social media, Mr. Raymond Ellis stood before a new door, a small apartment on the 2nd floor of a quiet neighborhood in Southfield, Michigan. Not a penthouse, not a mansion, just a place with a secure lock, a window facing the park, and a real bed. For the first time in years, he could sleep without folding his coat into a pillow. The media had slowly pulled away. The hashtag Raymond Ellis had made room for new stories. But to Raymond, that didn't matter. He didn't live to be remembered. He just wanted to live. The following week, he stepped into a classroom at Southfield Edison High School, where he had started a volunteer teaching program for students. No name tag, no title. The teacher gave a simple introduction. "Everyone, this is Mr. Raymond. Please listen to what he has to say." Raymond didn't talk about the FBI, didn't list his accomplishments. He spoke about lost trust, the fear of silence, and the value of ordinary kindness. He spoke about the days when no one looked at him. Then he said, "Wearing an old coat doesn't mean someone is worthless. And sitting in silence doesn't mean they have nothing to say." There was no applause after his first talk, but one student in the back row stood up, walked over to Mr. Raymond, and said, "Sir, I never thought someone like me could have a voice." Raymond smiled. "And now you know, don't you? 1 week, 1 classroom, 1 person who listens. That's enough. Not everyone wearing an old coat is anonymous. Not everyone who sits in silence is without value. And sometimes, to change an entire system, you only need to stay silent at the right moment and call the right person." And just like that, a single phone call from the homeless man they had looked down on cost both police officers their careers. Once again, life reminds us, never judge someone by their appearance. You never know who you're really dealing with. Will justice always prevail, or does prejudice still quietly simmer beneath the surface of society? Share your thoughts in the comments below. And don't forget to like and subscribe to Black Strength Stories channel so you won't miss the next gripping and inspiring story.